Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Embracing Possibility. Today, we are going to be exploring how to build inner agility within our teams and our people for the digital world. I'm Chandra Combrink, lead for client value and growth at Free2Grow, and I'm so happy to be able to spend the next hour or so with you all. I'm joining from Joburg, and we'd really love to hear from you in the chat where you're joining in from and what you're hoping to gain from our time together. Please feel free to type in your questions and comments into the chat as we go, as we set aside some dedicated Q&A time at the end for the discussion. As your MC, I have the joy of introducing Free2Grow to you. At Free2Grow, we've spent over 3 decades demonstrating that when you touch hearts and open minds, you change behaviors. We are passionate about nurturing the well-being and growth of people, not just as employees, but as individuals. Our purpose is to help employees become free to grow. When people feel empowered and engaged, they don't just show up. They show up with their best selves, ready to contribute meaningfully to the success of the business. Our methodology hasn't been developed in isolation. It's been built through over 30 years of partnerships with organizations like the ones you see here, some of whom we have been with us since the beginning. It's these real-world experiences that make our approach so effective. I now have the privilege of introducing our 2 speakers for this morning. Firstly, Hamsha, who is an international keynote speaker and board-level people strategist with over 32 years of experience leading large-scale transformations across the financial services, FMCG, and retail industries. A former group chief people officer and recognized as a top global HR influencer, she specializes in connecting strategy and behavioral insights to help executives turn transformation into measurable business results. I've gotten to know Hamsha over this last while, and she is passionate and well-versed in the topic we are discussing today. And I'm excited to learn from her as we unpack the latest AI trends with practical insights so that we and our teams can shift from AI anxiety to AI agency. Our next speaker and my fellow colleague is Mbuso, with over 13 years of experience as a process facilitator across the African continent, specifically within the culture and engagement space. Mbuso is a dynamic presenter known for his ability to connect with and inspire diverse groups all the way from shop floor to the C-suite. Mbuso will showcase how the Free2Grow Fit to Thrive program builds the inner agility needed for people to move from hesitation to digital enablement, ensuring they can fully contribute to transformation and business success by embracing what's possible. Over to you, Hamsha.
Thank you so much, Chandra, for inviting me, and for Linda for giving me this opportunity to collaborate with you and the team. I really enjoyed this time, and I'm so looking forward. So good morning, everyone, and it's so great to be here to talk about a subject that I'm truly passionate about, and that's AI, but AI with human engagement. And we are sometimes missing that conversation in our boardrooms and executive C-suite boardrooms as well. So it'll be so great to really just get into the discussion around how do we shift from AI anxiety to AI agency. But before I get into AI agency and how we get really good at this, I think it's so important for us to define what is agency. A lot of tech CEOs and venture capitalists, are always talking about employees needing to have agency in the AI age. So let me explain that a little before we get into the subject. For me, it's about the ability to act with purpose. It's about taking initiative, sharing insights with decision makers. It's checking assumptions and challenging assumptions. It's constantly navigating challenges proactively. And I think when we actually are able to own our space and take ownership of our work and own our career trajectory in this specific way, we often lead with high engagement and with productivity. So that becomes the result of everything we do. And today I'm going to help you understand how to build this as we transition into this fascinating transformation. So firstly, I think we all experience this. It's Monday morning. A senior HR manager with 15 years experience stares at a meeting invite, AI strategy rollout. Her first thought is, will I still matter next year? She's not alone. The feeling is in every boardroom, in every team, and in every corridor right now. And today, we're not going to add to that anxiety. We're here to answer the question, how do we turn fear into agency? So I hope you join me in really exploring this morning. So let's start with, where is AI adoption rate at the moment? And where is our people readiness? And this is such an important point. Now, this chart seems a little busy, but let me help you. For some reason, my mouse is not playing very well today. So firstly, if you look at this chart on the top, it talks to what are the current AI adoption rates. And we can see there's a huge surge at the moment. So if we look at the AI production models being deployed in organizations today, it's growing 1,100% year on year. And if we look at vector DBs, which is vector databases. Now, let me explain that quickly. You don't need to get hooked up by what that is. It's basically when you prompt AI on anything, it will go into these databases to search for the meaning of what you are trying to find. Okay, so this is the AI brain. And then lastly, NLP use cases is really natural language processing. So the form you would see it in the workplace is really the chatbot. So it's the voice that communicates with the human. Okay, now you can see even with the vector databases, it's 377% growing. And so is NLP use cases, growing at a steady rate of 75%. Now that's interesting. But then let's look at where the workforce is. We are at a readiness of 16%. So we measure AI readiness by a thing called AI quotient. So remember, you have IQ, EQ, AQ, adaptability quotient. Now we got AIQ as well. And our AIQ currently is sitting at 16%. The industry target worldwide should be at 50%, but we're only at 16, and we are hoping to get to 26% by the end of this year. So that's an interesting thing. So this slide just basically shows the huge gap of where AI is being deployed with such acceleration in the workplace, but we are leaving our people behind. And that's the point that I'm truly passionate about today. And so you will see there's some organizations that are doing really great in helping to deploy AI and take people on the journey as well. I'll actually speak about the IKEA one later on. But let me talk to Walmart. And why? Because they've been part of my journey in the corporate world as well. I've been part of their group. And they've done something really quite remarkable. They have actually put in AI-powered hyper-personalization at scale. And what this means is that they were able, in real time, to measure customer behavior. So how are they currently browsing? What's the context? What's their current context, their location, their time of day? And in real time, they were able to shift their customer and business strategies to meet the needs of their customers. Now, this is a huge competitive and strategic advantage. And in the process, they didn't just deploy the systems, but and platforms, they also train their people to respond appropriately and edit and focus quite clearly in terms of fact-checking the data when it came through. And this has given them a huge competitive advantage amongst amongst their competitors. But then you have people like Block. And now, if you remember, the CEO of Twitter is now the CEO of Block. And he recently, it was a huge media hype, where he actually basically did massive layoffs. And he has laid off almost half of his workforce because he doesn't believe that we need people in the workforce as many than we previously did. And he lost the trust of his people immediately by that approach that he's followed. And we've seen this approach amongst many other organizations as well. So ServiceNow, Meta, Microsoft, Accenture, they've all done massive layoffs. But it's not only that they have done these massive layoffs, between 20 to 30% of employees. They have done it without thinking of the ramifications or consequences of it. And that is the real challenge that we're faced with right now, because they're talking from a place of efficiency and productivity. And how do we actually take that money and invest it in other things, or how do we improve our bottom line? Rather than saying, how do we leverage AI for and work with our employees to deliver great value to our organization? So it's quite interesting to see how so quickly these companies have eroded trust in amongst their employees, but also in the market and with their customers, because ultimately employees are customers too. And so what is so interesting about companies like this, we've seen this with Microsoft and we've seen this with Cloud.now, a fintech company. Very early on, they immediately reduced their customer facing environment, the back end of customer support. They replaced at least 20 to 30% of their staff with AI, doing more tier 1 and tier 2 type of work. And what is interesting is that AI couldn't always deal with the highly complex customer issues. And so a lot of issues were unresolved. And the people or the employees that were remaining had to somehow get involved and deal with it. And so their workload increased substantially. And Cloud.now ended up actually having to rehire all of those employees again. So you can see how not having a clear strategic focus on the value AI is going to bring and only focusing on efficiency and productivity can actually lead to bigger problems and challenges and having to shift your strategy again. So it is so important that we actually not only focus on leveraging efficiency and just focusing on technology. The focus should be about how do we approach it from a people-first organization win, and how do we do it where we leverage AI to support the human. And I think that is probably the most important thing I would leave you with. We cannot take for granted institutional knowledge, human judgment, experience cannot be automated overnight. And that is the message that I want to leave you with on this slide. The real winners here is the shift that make the shift from not just cutting mass jobs, but actually using AI in the right way. Okay, and so I hope that is kind of landing in terms of how important it is for us to really do this in a smart way and a strategic way for both value and growth and sustainability of your organization as well. So this is one that I'm really passionate about. And I would like to ask you the question, are we designing AI to serve humans? Or are we designing humans to serve AI? A good question. The answer should always be the former. But without governance, organizations drift towards the latter. And this is why every organization needs AI ethics boards in your organization. to manage your reputation and manage all of your risks. And let me explain this in more detail. And I'd like to give you an example of this, actually. So there is a legal firm, and a very elite legal firm in the UK, Simon & Cromwell. They were involved in a huge billion-dollar cryptocurrency fraud case. And they were actually caught by the opposing counsel with inaccurate legal citations on their evidence. And what happened is this company used a custom ChatGPT to manage their all of their research and references, and to manage pulling together all of the data they needed for their evidence. And they did have the guardrails and rules in place. Junior employee, it was actually quite a senior employee who didn't follow the rules around managing this, because we all, as the humans, have to be the editors, the fact checkers, the validators of all the information that AI brings. Why? Because AI still hallucinates. There are so many research inaccuracies still. There are so many, the AI can also manipulate. So there is manipulation and threats. There is security risks from a cybersecurity level. And AI can also blackmail you. And Anthropic has done all of that research, and McKinsey as well, and have found how actually they can blackmail you as well, based on the amount of information they have on you, if they don't get what they want. So the importance of an AI ethics board and having guardrails and policies in your organization is so critical. I've been speaking at quite a few platforms recently, and I've asked a lot of the people in the audience, do you have an AI ethics board in place? And a lot of people, it just kind of went over their head. No, what does that mean? Do you have an AI policy? Do you have specific guardrails in place? And this is so critical because your company's reputation is at risk. Your credibility is at risk. And that's what happened at Simon & Cromwell. And they had to admit to the judge that they did not have double-checked what AI had put forth in terms of the legal citations. And if you look at case law in South Africa today, you will see, if you just go and study it, there's so many cases where legal firms have been fined by judges for having inaccurate research and legal citations as well. So having double-checked that is so important. And that's where humans are so important, that you cannot rely on AI at this moment to do everything for you. They are good at the doing work, but they're not good at the thinking and the editorial work yet. And just to give you another example, which is so brings it home, the South African government just put out an AI policy recently for public commentary. And it was the public that picked up that a number of their references and research was inaccurate. In fact, in their bibliography, their references were not aligned to what their points on their research showed on the document. And so now they have to go back and redo that again. Look at their credibility in putting an AI policy. And now the Home Affairs has found out that a number of their policies that was actually approved by provincial and national governments have actually also got all of these inaccuracies in there. And they're going back to 2022 when they started using AI to do a number of the research work and to rectify everything. So it's actually quite embarrassing and has a huge reputational risk. So I really implore you to really go back to your organizations and ensure that this is starting to happen. So let's go and talk about leadership and the role of leadership on this change and transformation journey that is so incredibly important. Humans with AI will replace humans without it. And that is our new leadership reality. And we need to think about that for a moment and how critical that is. And that's part of the AI agency I talk about as well. So what is our leadership imperative here? It's beyond efficiency. How is AI part of our strategy, How is AI part of our innovation and growth and future sustainability? That's the question we as leaders should be asking. And I've spoken a lot about when leaders talk just purely efficiency and productivity, how that doesn't achieve much in the longer term. And it's important to understand that as leaders, this calls for a huge mindset shift in how we lead in organizations going forward. And it's nothing new, but it's actually as important than ever before. So we need to stop automating tasks, but we need to start reimagining value for our organization. We need to think about how AI is part of our strategy, our growth drive, and our sustainability drivers in our organization. We need to stop managing with mandates and metrics. That's not, and yes, we are going to get the mandate from the top, but then we take that mandate, and it's how we work with the mandate that matters. We need to lead with psychological safety. So one of the most important points I'm going to leave you with today is this one. Our people are facing their most existential crisis today. Now, everyone will say to you, but yes, we've been through the Industrial Revolution. We've been through the tractor invention, the trains, the cell phone, the internet. This is different. This is not the same. Those were tools that helped us do our jobs better. This particular shift and transformation in our lives is actually changing our personal identity. It's changing. If you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're going right up to self-actualization on the needs, levels of needs. And why? Because it's shifting the fact that it doesn't matter about your tenure anymore. It doesn't matter about your skills and experience anymore. It doesn't matter how long you've been here or what you've achieved. It matters now that you've got to reinvent yourself. It matters about taking the skills that you have that will bring the same value to you in the future and building on those skills and really growing to that next level now. So it shifts your personal identity. So that's why I call it an existential crisis. And it's not an easy one. And we all know that we as humans struggle with change naturally. And now to actually go through something like this, because it's not only about you maybe not having a job. So when you go through, a number of us go through Section 189, the changes in operating models and structures or new tech being deployed in your organization, and you may lose your job or you may get redeployed. This kind of change, you may not have a job and not be able to get another job. That's where the existential crisis comes in. And how do we gear up proactively and have the agency to actually start to own this and shift our mindsets and work with this identity change is so critical, and how we help our people go through that change. So it's important to acknowledge the loss and to engage with that loss. And before you start to say, no, but we have to employ this and we have to do this and put this AI platform in place, deal with anxiety, focus on your people. And that's why I say that's the most important thing I want to leave you with today. And as HR and leaders, you are the bridge between technology and the people. The transformation lives and dies with you. And that's the most important thing. So what I ask you to do, I know when in South Africa, because of the labor laws, we keep everything very close to our hearts before we engage or consult with our employees. This change requires you to do something different. It's requiring you to take your people on the journey with you. And that's where psychological safety comes into play. You have to allow people to voice dissent. You have to consult and engage with what they're thinking about around what are the innovative ideas they have. And what are their opinions around the change that is happening? What solutions will work well for their work and in their area of expertise? Because they're at the rock face and they know better than any one of us what will work best. So engage them with their ideas and thoughts. And you can only create that by creating psychological safety, safe work environments, and allow them to experiment. That is the most critical thing. Allow them to experiment with you and go through the journey with you and find the right solutions. And at the end of the journey, if they find that they no longer have a job, they would already be knowing this along the journey and proactively developing the right skills, retraining themselves, or looking at other opportunities, or maybe going into entrepreneurial opportunities. But at the end of the day, while it will be disappointing and painful, it won't be as bad because you've taken them on the journey. So that's for me, and this is the most critical slide that I would leave you with today. And I'm hoping that has landed. I'm sensing it has. Sorry, here goes my mouse again for some reason. There we go. Okay, so what skills do our employees need? How many of these actually you are developing in your teams today, actively developing in your teams today? Probably most of them. You know, when I've been in corporate for the last 30 years, this has always been the competencies we are developing actively. I'm sure Free to Grow has spent a lot of time developing programs around these particular competencies. But you will notice there is one that is only technical in all of these, and that's the AI literacy. The rest are human skills, and they're irreplaceable human skills. And we also found that, you know, the World Economic Forum has also put out this year 3 particular skills that are also critical. And that is AI proficiency, carbon intelligence, and virtual intelligence. Now, if you look at these skills, yes, we all need the AI literacy. We have to become literate on using AI tools, absolutely. And a lot of people will say to you, yeah, but I don't have the time to do this. Well, you integrate it into your lifestyle. You integrate it into the work you do. And if you do that and you experiment and learn, and what the beautiful part about where we are today is that there are so many free programs available. There are so many AI influencers that teach you so much about AI. In fact, I don't even do a lot of the programs anymore. I listen to the AI influencers, and they give you so many tips on what to do and when to do it and how to do it, and which particular AI tool is good for which particular piece of work. And that's really how I've learned organically. And if I'm 57 and I can keep learning and growing and developing apps with using AI platforms, you can do it too. Trust me. And so these particular skills are so brilliant because they're what I call transferable skills. You can use these skills in any role. And that's why a lot of tech CEOs are also telling a lot of parents and a lot of employers, you must encourage people to study the humanities. Because if you think about having to focus on judgment, discernment, influence, having high emotional intelligence, you should be studying anthropology, philosophy, sociology. Those are the things that are actually going to matter in being able to do your job as an editor and using discernment and judgment and influence in your workplace going forward. So I would really encourage your kids to be studying that in the future. So all your Gen As. And so these skills can be transferred to any role. So let me also help you understand that when we employ or deploy AI platforms into organizations today, you cannot just deploy it without changing context. Organizations' current operating model will not operate well with AI as it stands today. Your traditional hierarchies will not work with AI today. AI works with smaller, flatter structures. So you have to shift your operating models. You have to be able to shift their ways of working. Your culture needs to shift to adopt these new strategies. And that is another incredibly important thing we need to consider as we go through these journeys as well. And in order for us to become AI proficient, to monitor and mitigate environmental impact, because AI and these data centers are going to be pulling a lot of our natural resources, electricity, power, as well as water resources. How do we monitor and mitigate that? Having that critical analytical thinking innovatively and bringing creative solutions to the table to monitor and manage these issues is really the kind of skills you need. And so having the AI proficiency, having the intelligence and building creative solutions around your environmental impact. And then lastly, how we lead in these digital environments. And this is why I strongly believe HR is going to shift completely. And I'm starting to refer to you all as human integration technologists, because we are going to be working alongside robots and agents, AI agents. We've already started working with AI agents. And how do you integrate a new culture of working with technology and humans together along side by side? And that's the wonderful way of redefining HR into the future and shifting what that culture will look like into the future. So before I leave you, I just want to leave you with a very short pathway so that I don't want to overwhelm you around how can we move forward? How can we take all what we learned today and really just my call to action to you and to take this back to your organizations and work with it. First, assess where your team's at. Not only in terms of the AI readiness, but most importantly, what are your team's anxiety levels? Start there. Understand that fully. Pause, reflect, and spend time with your people, understanding that, and work with it before you even think of AI deployment. Really invest time upskilling your people, not only in the AI skills, but also in the human skills. Hierarchies, roles no longer exist. It's all about skills. And those critical skills I speak about are so important because roles are going to be transferable. They're going to be flatter structures. You can move seamlessly to roles, but having the core foundational skills is what's important. And then reimagine workflows that can really shift end to end, whether it's on your customer workflows, whether it's on your employee workflows, whether it's on technical workflows. Reimagine, bring that innovation, think differently of how you can use AI to augment with your people. So leveraging AI, and that's the most important thing. So keep your best people, give them the powerful tools, and let AI enhance productivity instead of replacing it. That is the most critical message I would leave with you today. AI does not outperform humans. Humans using AI outperform everyone else. And this is the choice every organization faces. You can automate and discard, or you can decide to invest and transform. And I'll leave you there today with that message. Thank you very much for the time. It's been wonderful talking to you all.
Thank you so much, Hamsha. That was an absolutely insightful and very stimulating presentation. Quite eye-opening and a beautiful focus on AI, the status quo, where we are, how rapidly the space is growing. And it actually inspires a bit of movement, curiosity, wanting to connect more, know more, and find where AI is directly relevant to one specific role. Thank you so much for that. My name is Mbuso Mlagisi, and I'll be taking you through some of the more practical solutions in terms of engaging people in the workplace so that there's greater adoption of the technologies that we use to drive efficiencies in the organization. And I've been with Free to Grow for 13 years, and I'm going to share a program that we designed to move this journey along of adoption of technology, its efficient use in the organization, and the right attitudes by employees and the workforce in relation to the types of technologies that we're using to drive efficiencies in the organization. So just a little bit of context here, while keeping to some of the non-disclosure agreements that one has in place, but the themes are palatable across industry. I mean, the birth of Fit to Thrive as a vessel that enables people to embrace the possibilities that different types of technologies and organizations bring, and to increase that adoption of technology in organizations was a challenge that was brought to us by an organization that had a business unit that has repositioned its strategic positioning in that organization, and also had technologies that were meant to build the baseline, the data that would increase the intelligence in that organization. And we're also met with the challenge to find other, in this particular case, AI-based tools to drive efficiencies within that particular business unit. And then the birth of Fit to Thrive was inspired by that engagement. And there was that sense of, credible data saying this need is far greater than that unique and niche engagement. And this has now grown in terms of delivering it to different types of clients who are trying to catalyze that positive adoption of technology and manage that fear that people normally have, because it seems as if, generally speaking, the sense in organization, especially over the years of experience that I've been privileged to have in the space, is it seems like it's technology versus the people versus technology with the people. And hence, the adoption of technology becomes a very tricky thing, because when we see a certain application of tech coming into our workspace, that immediate sort of trigger becomes that sense of threat. Echoing exactly what Hamsha said, is this the journey to my replacement? And that narrative is not palatable for conducive adoption and effective usage of tech, and shifting your people and moving them forward and helping them to be agile. So we leverage that word to say, how can we be fit to thrive? And being fit to thrive speaks to a certain level of agility. So using a play on that word, these are some of the areas where these natural human conversations take place within the organization. And that A, representing awareness, understanding the business need for change, absolutely crucial. What does the G stand for? The mindset that is applied in context of that change and of that awareness, and how that enables for things to be fruitfully implemented and utilized to the effect of the plan that was put in place, the purpose for which something was introduced, the need that was being addressed. And the I, the importance of taking initiative, proactively contributing to a new direction. And the L in that agile is taking leadership at all levels. And we'll unpack quite succinctly what we mean. So leading from where you are. And last but not least, a vessel, a vehicle that actually drives the impact that we want to see within the organization, and what type of thinking is required from the employees, from the heartbeat of the business, which are the people in the organization. So this takes place over literally a day, where one has a healthy conversation that gives you the ability to self-contract and then to self-drive. And that is absolutely crucial. And if you reflect, maybe in the different organizations that you have been in, at times you get an executive decision, a group of individuals come together, they look at how the business operates, and they see an opportunity to drive certain types of operational efficiencies within that organization. A decision is taken, and then an announcement is made. We shall now be not using that paper-based approach in a certain type of process. We will now be making use of this particular tablet. And all the evidence is pointing to the fact that this is absolutely a great decision, and it definitely is, until the tablet is placed in the hands of those that have to utilize it, and then the adoption is much lower than one would have anticipated. And then people start to ask, but why? Why aren't we making use of this? This was a great idea. We have made a massive investment, but the usage and the adoption of that tech is not on par with what one would have expected. And that's where you see there's a misalignment. So awareness, understanding the business need for change. And this is where the need for conversations take place, to sit down and have that conversation where I want to plug in, not a conversation where I feel forced to comply with something that I didn't even believe in the first place. So there's a quotation here by Nathaniel Branden that says the first step towards change is awareness, and the second step is acceptance. You can almost predict what the next step is, which is we then have to respond. And why does this absolutely matter? Because I need to understand the why behind certain types of technology, like artificial intelligence, are being utilized in my specific department or being integrated into a specific type of process. And that understanding goes the distance, despite whether I am excited or not, but it is foundational to how I will respond to a certain type of technology being utilized in an organization. It helps me to be fit to thrive. I understand. I accept this reality, and then it will start influencing how I respond to it. So the fact of the matter is, there is no bulletproof bunker where I am totally unaffected by the changes that are happening around me. So whatever's happening in the world, be it the geopolitics, be it the shifts in business environment, it affects our workplaces, it affects our organizations, and it all filters down to the teams that we work in organizations, and it also touches me as an individual. So there's no place to hide or some place where I can just pretend that change is not happening. I will be affected. So the best thing to do is to calibrate my response in relation to the changes that I see happening. And we learn, from organizations of yesteryear. And one such organization that was based in the United States was Blockbuster Video. I mean, for those of us who are plugging in here from South Africa, I'm based in Johannesburg, we might remember the likes of the Mr. Videos, and in the different markets, there may have been different names, but once upon a time, this was the primary way in which we consumed content. Lo and behold, bubbling under as the internet started to grow, Netflix was crafting another channel to access content. And on that journey as a loss-making business, they did engage with Blockbuster along the way and had a conversation. They didn't have a meeting of minds. At the time, the leadership team at Blockbuster didn't see the vision that Netflix was trying to sell and saying, I think this is the future. And being that as it may, as we speak today, Blockbuster is now just one little outlet in the United States where people go for nostalgia to say, hey, once upon a time, this is how we used to consume content. And lo and behold, Netflix is a massive giant in the space with phenomenal, market share and value. So that in its own are just indicators of that reminder of the importance of agility and adaptation, but also the importance of curiosity. So what is one really being aware of here? If we use, a term that describes the business environment, when you look at these two pictures and you think the image on the left versus the image on the right, which one best describes the business environment as we have experienced it, arguably, over the last couple of decades? Undoubtedly, you would see the business, one would think that the image on the right would best describe that. Now, the description of this environment, I mean, its roots is in the 80s in the American military, but it became utilized to describe the business environment, its volatility, its uncertainty, its complexity, and the need to be agile because of how ambiguous this environment is. It's no longer a theory, it's a reality that we find ourselves living in. And as a result, many businesses have risen and they have fallen on the back of not being able to be fit to thrive in this environment. And that means influencing the people in our organizations to have an acceptance of this reality and not stick their hands in the sand like ostrich and pretend that nothing is happening. So awareness, that is the first part. Got to be agreeable that indeed there is a need. Now, defining the need is only just one step, but how one responds to that need in terms of the type of mindset that they apply to what one is now aware of is integral. It makes you think about the difference to say, if you think about a VUCA environment, and these descriptions of these environments have evolved. I mean, we're speaking about Bain now, but VUCA is still absolutely relevant. And if you ask yourself, what type of mindset is the right match in order for one to thrive? Unquestionably, a fixed mindset would not be the way to go. So in a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous business environment that requires very intentional agility, we need to shift and expand the parameters of our comfort zones. And a growth mindset is absolutely integral to doing that. And hence the name of the webinar. I gotta get into the spirit of embracing possibilities instead of ignoring what is glaringly in our faces in terms of the dynamics that are at play that influence the survival of businesses, the well-being of our people, and so on and so forth, such as the domino effect. So one needs to be willing to take that leap, to take that step, push themselves out of that comfort zone and find themselves entering that growth zone, which is quite a demand of our business environment these days. We are consistently transforming. In the 13 years of working in this organization, Free to Grow, which I personally love absolutely dearly, when I think about what I was upon arrival, what I am now, capabilities and skills that have been grown, that are influenced by changes in the environment, sometimes one can sit in shock in what one is capable of doing now relative to what one was unable to do many years ago. And I'm sure many of us can relate from, I could never do that, to, wow, that's actually within my comfort zone. That is the name of the game, and that is the reality that we find ourselves in. But finding that neural pathway from going from that comfort zone means one needs to work through the fear. It's natural to feel fear. It's natural to be anxious. But what we cannot afford to do is to let the fear paralyze us. We've got to scrutinize that fear. And in many instances, one will find, why am I scared? I'm scared because I don't know how to do this. I'm scared because I think I might not be good at it. I'm scared because I think I might fail at it. And if you think about it, the paralysis guarantees those outcomes. But working through it and getting into that learning zone and saying, what is the best response? Let me be curious. Let me find out more. Let me learn. Let me understand what this is about, is a better place to be than to simply be stuck in that fear zone. And once we get into that learning zone, in so many cases we discover that wasn't as bad as I thought. That might not have been as difficult as I imagined. In fact, maybe this is great and I want to do more of this. And that puts us in that growth zone. And that cycle keeps repeating itself. And it is a bit frustrating because it is the frequency of going through the cycle. As soon as I expand that comfort zone, there's something else to learn, such as the nature of the times that we are living in. And that is something we have to accept and to start embracing. And going through this type of conversation and learning experience helps people to connect those dots for themselves so their actions come from a place of willingness, of wanting to, of understanding, and not from feeling like it is being imposed. I see why it's important and I want to do it. So, interesting enough, when we speak about alignment, if you know a little bit about snow geese, you would know that the formation in which they fly is absolutely no coincidence. It helps with the efficiency and even the toll of energy that it takes for them to fly absolutely long distances, way longer than an individual could fly, is influenced by this formation. And over and above that, the bird that is right at the front doesn't always stay at the front. They actually keep rotating. Who takes the lead? And that speaks to exactly what Hamsha was saying. I mean, the hierarchies are getting flatter in organizations, and the need for everyone to be aligned, to be plugged in so that we move in one direction is becoming way more integral. Top-down approach, not always. We cannot stick to that approach only. We also need a bottom-up approach in order to be aligned and to move in one direction with the type of decisions that have been made in organization and how we support those decisions. So one is aware, one also realizes the pros and cons of the type of mindset that we apply and hopefully sees that the growth mindset is absolutely the way to go, that embraces possibility. And then initiative is required, being proactive to contribute to the new direction or the adoption of systems and technologies that can assist us to add value to our clients, to be more efficient as an organization, contributing. Interesting enough here, one needs to be quite aware of their business context. What is actually needed here? Are we pivoting or do we need to make small tweaks? And when you look at it through the context of businesses that one would think, jeepers, these guys arguably should still be here. I think about the likes of the Musicas, in the South African context. There was a business called Musica, and they were selling compact CDs and associated sort of products. But the core product was those compact CDs, cassettes, and that's how we got our music at the time. And arguably could still be here had they maybe found a way to pivot, fundamentally shift the business. The difference between a pivot and a tweak is, a pivot is a far greater change than a tweak. A tweak sits closer to the optimization of what we are already doing. If you think about the retail sector, the supermarkets, for example, the addition of an online channel to access product is sitting closer to an optimization, closer to a tweak than a total pivot. Essentially, turning the supermarket into almost a warehouse in which we can walk in, but on top of that, we can access product online, which then gets delivered to us. That shows you we're optimizing what we do. They haven't shifted the business or changed what it is that they sell. So you've got to be cognizant in terms of the applications that we want to make use of, and understanding that as we are being proactive, we think about the tweaks that are relevant to adding value in our organization, adding value to the clients. And we think about some organizations may be at threat of extinction because fundamentally they need to pivot exactly how they operate and how they function. So there are two pathways when you think about being, taking that initiative. Do you need to pivot or do you need to make tweaks? And it makes people think about how that relates to the work that they do and how that contributes to where the organization is and where it is going. But to decompress sometimes the anxiety people feel, especially when the language gets quite technological, and that's still quite a real thing. We start where we are. We use what we have and we do what we can. Because where else can we possibly start? But what is important here is that we are living in a time where if we do not disrupt ourselves, we will be disrupted anyway by forces that we find in the business environment. So even when things are going well, we got to have our eye on the ball when it comes to continuous improvement and just sit down and say, even though this is going well, could it go better? Could we do it differently? And that reimagining is something critical. And you don't want to be pushed by business environment to do. Now we want to sit and disrupt ourselves, ask ourselves questions, so that we can remain fit to thrive. And in certain aspects, we can be leaders in industry, leaders in our professionals, leaders in our roles. So what else is crucial? Now that one is aware, one sees the best mindset to apply to context. One realizes the importance of taking the initiative. So then it strengthens how we all lead ourselves. Here it says, taking leadership at all levels. Leadership at all levels. Why is that crucial? Leadership at all levels. Firstly, as things change, so must we. Here it says, when the music changes, so must the dance. And without fail, the music has changed. And we need to adapt to it and how we vibe with it and how we step to it. So what do we mean by leadership at all levels? Two fundamental things here need to come together, and which is my inner yes, when you look at the left, my willingness, I need to have the right attitude towards the things that are changing around me. And that goes a long way. But over and above the attitude, I also need to have the capabilities. Can I actually do what needs to be done? Do I have the skills? Do I have the knowledge? And do I have the tools? Do we need to support? Do we need to capacitate? Do we need to empower? And in many instances, the answer is yes. So having the willingness without the capability can lead to frustrations. It can also lead to failure. And having the capability without the willingness basically leads to reluctant compliance, feeling that I have been forced to do it. And when you put these together, get the willingness right, when we engage with departments, with our teams, with our workforce, and assuring that the support structures are there so that the capability is built, then we've got a powerful force in terms of extracting the efficiencies that we're looking for when we leverage certain types of technologies in our organizations, and the adoption rate is far more stronger. So right at the tail end of this one-day engagement that we have to alter the state, to influence the minds, to shift that behavior, and to lead to the type of result that one is hoping for as an organization. Sometimes you need that vessel. And enterprise thinking is a way of thinking where I hover above my role and I'm able to see my job, not just as a job, but really as a business, how I function, thinking and acting like a business owner. And what does that help people to do? To reflect on some of the metrics that influence performance of an organization, to see that touch point and connection between my work and how it influences business. Do I manage my time in a way that is optimal? Am I cognizant of how I operate and how it influences costs in an organization. Am I aware of the value? Am I focused on the things that add the greatest value to our beneficiaries, to our clients? Second, lastly, am I collaborating? Are those internal service touch points, are we engaging and building together instead of having unhealthy conflict that doesn't lead to quality solutions? And last but not least, where do I leverage technology like artificial intelligence to speak to my daily work? Where's the value in process? What do I do? Where can I make it more efficient? And if I echo something that is just lingering from Hamsha's presentation, is that indeed it is difficult to compete with someone who's growing in tech competencies like artificial intelligence, because our turnaround times, are so hard to compete with. Our throughput, our value, our cost is something that is quite compelling when we are competent in making use of technology like artificial intelligence and integrating it into how we deliver value. So if you don't know where to begin and you want your people to be on board, these types of conversations can be a great influence and can yield awesome results. So hopefully that might inspire us to embrace possibilities, but to take our people along. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Mbuso. And thank you so much to Hamsha as well. I think it's encouraging for me to hear around what is possible in AI and the ability that we have to shift our minds and behaviors to achieve the agency that we are looking for. So thank you so much for your contribution to both of you and for taking us sort of through that really important picture and understanding what we can sort of do as we respond for in a leadership position and also for our people. So this brings us to the discussion part of our webinar, and we would really love to hear your thoughts or questions. And if you would like to ask something, you can raise your hand and I'll turn on your mic and camera, or you feel free to type it into the chat and we will take it from there. I think to kick us off, I have a question for Hamsha. And I wanted to ask, so how do we help employees redefine their personal identity alongside AI?
Thanks so much, Chandra. I think it's such an important question. This is the coaching question. It's not a training program. People need space to process this because, as I said earlier on, identity shifts is such a massive kind of experience that we go through as humans, where we have to redefine ourselves and think about how do we fit into this new world and what do we bring that we have and how we build on that. And then how do we engage and interact in this new world with technology? And so it's definitely a coaching process that we need to engage with our employees on and help them understand with empathy and non-judgment how they can start to develop and see things differently through a different lens. And therefore, I always say, don't try and put your people through a training program to try and work through this. It's definitely through a coaching experience and to help them understand and create a sense of their own value and contribution in the space as we move forward.
Thank you for that. Thank you for unpacking that. And I think it is, I think the coaching, that's the sort of one word that I'm taking away, is that it's important for us as leaders to be coaching, and that it's a continual sort of conversation, I guess, that's needing to happen between ourselves and our people. I have a question here for Mbuso. So Mbuso, the question says, for those of us who feel like we're back at square one because of AI, how does the Fit to Thrive framework, specifically the sort of 5 capabilities that we spoke about around inner agility, help a person to move from feeling overwhelmed. And I think exactly to like what Hamsha was saying around the anxiety, to actually having a sense of agency again.
Thank you so much for that question. I think I can only answer that from a lived experience. You know, what actually happens when I see people walking into the room with frustrations about organizational changes, and how do they exit, and what triggers that? And if I say what triggers that is literally the learning, it's the experience itself. It's having the time to sit and reflect on the different elements that are involved, and that understanding of the need in the right application of which mindset is the best one. And it all anchors on the need for us to want to thrive, because despite what's happening in the world, we still want to perform. We want to do well, not only at work, but even in our personal lives. So once you anchor your what it is I'm trying to achieve at work and beyond, and give people the space to think and engage with each other, they actually help each other to shift, and we just become privileged to nurture the process towards the end. And the beautiful part, by the way, is right at the end. That enterprise thinking gives you a tangible framework to reflect on and actually implement. And when you are deliberate about that, you start to see the wins and the gains. So I think it's in the time that is made, the healthiness of the conversations, and how we go about navigating that. That makes you self-contract instead of feeling like it's been enforced upon you. That's the best way I could possibly answer that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think when we and I'd love to hear from both of you in terms of a response. If there was one thing, you know, because I guess even as we've gone through the presentation, as we've gone through things, some of my feeling at some points was like, wow, this is a lot. I'm feeling like a little bit overwhelmed, or, you know, this is a lot to take in. I know I need to do something, but almost sometimes the information can almost leave me sitting in that space. Like, what, you know, I'm now stuck here. I know that I have to do things, but I'm feeling almost overwhelmed, if that's the word. And I think as you both have been sharing, it's been helpful to sort of see the approach and how through lived experience we have to respond. I think the one thing that I thought could be great in sort of in a closing response is like, what's one thing that I could do today with my teams or my people, a small thing that I could do almost as an actionable today to take that one step forward as we look at how we can embrace possibility. And if you could both respond to that.
Okay, so I'll go first, and I think I may have said that a few times in my presentation, and I seriously didn't want to leave you in a state of overwhelm, Chandra. So
No, it was good. It was good. It was the urgency. I like it. It's
okay.
You know, moving me to action.
Yeah, and I think the first thing as an individual and as a leader, I think is to put in perspective where you're at, to actually take stock of all of your value, your skills, your knowledge, and then look at that and say, okay, so what have I got in my box right now, and what do I need? It's always about taking one step at a time. And also, you know, seek coaching, seek a good friend to chat to you about what you're going through. I think we also tend to hold a lot of stuff within ourselves and don't express what we're going through. And that doesn't help in helping to develop out what our plan should be, and how to, and then, you know, redefine yourself in the space of what agency means for yourself. And how do I develop that, and where's my next path, and what I would like to be doing, because for the first time I have a platform where I can start to paint a whole new picture, and that is also an exciting journey. So to reframe it from that space of overwhelm and anxiety to a space of, wow, this is a whole new chapter, and I can redefine who I am and what I'm doing with my life. And how I can also review my own sense of purpose. So those things are really important, and self-reflection and working on those things is, I think, the most critical thing. So again, it goes back to very human stuff, and don't forget to start working on that AI skills, because I think it's also part of the journey as well.
Yes, yeah. But just to say before I hand over to Mbuso, yeah, that painting, the opportunity to paint a new picture for myself, I was like, yes, that is, yeah, it's a really positive and hopeful reframe. So thank you for that.
I think that was a great answer, Hamsha, by the way. I think that's spot on. And I think I'm saying the same thing, possibly differently. The well-being check-in. It's so frequent, people don't meet you where you are. Sometimes they don't bother to find out where you are, but they point you to where they want you to go. And when you don't acknowledge where someone is, it's so difficult for them to latch on to where you want them to go. And so that well-being check-in, where are you now? Why do you feel the way that you feel? How do you want to feel? And how can we help you get there? Those are such integral questions, and that's normally where the frustration comes from. It's in the methodology of how you introduce things, which seems like it's just coming straight from the roof, landing on your head, and you are expected and immediately on the hook. You are now accountable for it. And that is quite frustrating. So I would say it's the well-being check-in. Let's ask, where are you? And then we take it from there.
Ask our people where they're at, rather than just tell them where we want them to be. I think that's, yeah, really powerful. And so, yeah, so in terms of time, we have now officially come to the end of our webinar together. And we'd obviously love to keep the conversation going. So you feel free to reach out to Mbuso or myself around how we can potentially work together to add value to your employee journey. And also, if you'd like to get in touch with Hamsha, just you can let us know, and we can put you in direct contact with her and take the conversation forward. So thank you so much for being with us, for giving us your time. Really appreciative to Hamsha and Mbuso, really appreciative to all of you that have been with us today. And here's to the next step and to embracing possibility. Bye-bye.